Christmas, and welcome to Rivers in the Wasteland. I'm your host, Amanda Williams, and today I'm going to share how God showed himself faithful when he responded to one of the deepest longings of my heart, even if it took way longer than I had hoped. Are you the type to have a 5-year plan? I definitely used to be that way. When Eric and I got married, we had a 5-year plan and we stuck to it. We wanted to be married 5 years before we had kids. We wanted to pay off all of our debt. We had $52,000 of debt between student loans and our car. We had a dream of backpacking Europe. And in the first 5 years of marriage, we accomplished all of that. We paid off all of that debt. We spent 3 weeks in Europe. And in 2015, we welcomed our first daughter, Amelia. Before I got pregnant with Amelia, I vividly remember going to a worship service and praying about the future of our family. I remember God gave me a vision of us sitting in front of a tree, and it was me and Eric, and we were surrounded by 4 kids. I felt like he was showing me a picture of our future family, and it was exciting and a little scary. I grew up in a house with 5 siblings, and we were all very close. It made life so fun, and I always imagined our family would be the same. I wanted all 4 kids back to back, so when Amelia was 6 months old, I was ready to start trying for our second. When I got pregnant with Amelia, it felt like it happened within the first month or so. It wasn't long at all. When we went for round 2, month after month went by and I wasn't pregnant. I remember the feeling on Amelia's first birthday. I was so excited for her and that milestone, but I was actually kind of sad because life wasn't looking the way I thought it would. It was the first time in my adult life that things weren't going as I had planned. It was right around that first birthday that I started to feel like I didn't have anything that was mine outside being a mom. I started an online makeup business and fully immersed myself in it. It thrived for about 2.5 years. I had a community of customers that I loved to serve and a community of others who sold the same product, and that really helped me feel like I was part of something bigger than myself. Something else that I was a part of during that season of life was ministry. I served on our worship team, I was part of our greeter ministry, and anything else that they needed, actually. I co-led trips to Guatemala for a few summers. We would go for a little over a week and share the gospel with schools and neighborhoods. I have always loved missions trips ever since I was in high school, so I really enjoyed being a part of that. Between motherhood, ministry, and my business, I was pretty occupied. I wanted a second child, but I was decently distracted. After a year or so went by, I was starting to feel like there might be something wrong. We were timing everything perfectly, and I still wasn't pregnant. It was challenging and frustrating, and the longer that journey went, the more disheartening it was. I always remembered the vision that God gave me of our family in front of the tree. I wasn't able to see it come to fruition in the timing that I thought it would, so I wrapped myself up more and more in my business. I wanted to hit every goal there was and lead the team in sales every month, and I did. I was in control of it, and I loved the level of greatness that I was achieving in that area. But there was a dark side to that season that I rarely talk about. I've struggled with anxiety ever since I was in college, and when I had my business, I always strived to outsell everyone. But every month, everyone's sales went down to 0. We had to start all over again, and at the first of every month, I would have severe anxiety, wondering how I was going to pull it off again. It was exhausting, and I always came through, but I exhausted myself while doing it. My anxiety became worse and worse, and my business became less and less successful. I felt like at some point, God took his hand off of it. It was always a lot of work, but once it stopped being fruitful, I felt like it was time for me to give it up. I felt like the Lord told me to lay it down. It was such a hard decision because so much of the community that I had built was wrapped around the identity of that business. When I closed that down, many of those people just moved on. It was very, very lonely. Something else that was on the horizon was the summer missions trip to Guatemala. Our pastor was making plans for the upcoming year, and I always was a sure yes. But for some reason, I felt like that wasn't the case that year. I felt the nudge to pass on helping to lead that trip. That was the opposite of what I wanted, so I knew that it had to be the Lord. I declined the invitation to lead and just told the Lord I didn't understand, but I wanted to obey. At that point in my life, I had been trying to get pregnant for close to 3 long years. I was so discouraged, and the dream of having the picture of what I thought my family would look like faded more and more with every failed pregnancy test. I don't know how many times I cried on the floor of my bathroom just wondering why it was so hard. God, why would you give me a dream and then not allow it to come to fruition? I am doing everything right. I'm trying to live a life of surrender. I'm serving you. I'm tithing. I'm obeying your word and all of your little nudges. What gives? And nothing. I heard nothing back. During year 3 of this trial, I co-led a small group and we did a book study on the book It's Not Supposed to Be This Way by Lisa TerKeurst. It rocked my world and it really helped heal the bitterness that had taken root in my heart. Through that healing, I was finally able to be at a place where I could say, whatever you want, Lord. If I only have one daughter, she's enough. You are enough. I want what you want, Lord. I thought I knew what you had for me, but I give up all of my plans and I just want yours. I had given him my business, my own desire to go on that missions trip, and our future. It was full surrender. I remember being at church, sitting on the front row of a worship service, and we were singing a song that went like this. I know a breakthrough is coming. By faith, I see a miracle. My God made me a promise and it won't stop now. And we sang that over and over and over again. And I meant it. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking the breakthrough was going to be me being pregnant. I was just claiming that the breakthrough of the season was coming, whatever that looked like. And it really felt good. It felt like it was freeing. I felt so free of having such a specific expectation, and it was awesome. Oddly enough, during that season, there were also 4 other women that I knew of that were struggling with fertility. I had been diagnosed with secondary infertility, which I didn't even know was a thing, and the other women were experiencing it for their first try for many different reasons. I had tried a few different medications to help out my hormones, but nothing was giving me any results. I remember one day I was at church, and our pastor got up and prayed a powerful prayer over the congregation against the spirit of infertility. He addressed the problem head on and broke chains. He cast out spirits associated with it and loosed health and fertility over all couples who were having troubles. I just stood there and wept. It was so powerful and it brought so much encouragement. That day that the pastor prayed that prayer over the congregation, something broke in the atmosphere. And I know this because within 6 months of that prayer, all of the couples, including us, had conceived a child. I will never forget the day that I found out I was pregnant with Isabel. I sat on the bathroom floor like I had so many times over the years prior. I had prayed and I had waited, and as I saw the result, I just sobbed. It was the last month I was attempting to use a particular medication. After that, I was told there weren't any other options except IVF, which we had already agreed we wouldn't do. I was ready to give up completely, and the Lord came through. He answered the longest prayer that I ever had. The timing was pretty crazy, though. I gave up my business and I said no to that missions trip. Within 2 months, I found out that I was pregnant. The level of anxiety I had while operating my business wouldn't have been healthy during my pregnancy. And if I had gone on that trip, I would have been about 6 months pregnant during it. No, thank you. Being on a missions trip, trying all the unique food, being on buses that go over roads that aren't paved, and no thanks. God was preparing me. I didn't know it at the time, but he was moving me away from things that would interfere with my pregnancy. He had to get my focus away from those other things so I could be healthy enough to walk through another pregnancy, and mine are always rough. The other day I was talking to a friend who I met in January 2019, just a few months before I got pregnant. She knew I had been trying to get pregnant again, and I shared the whole journey with her right when we met. She knew me as a mom of one, just for a few months. She said to me the other day, I met you when you were a mom of one and you were just praying for your second, and now you have 4 kids. You were a mom of 4. It is so wild. In the time it took me to get pregnant with Isabel, I had 3 more babies. Oh my gosh, I've never even thought about it like that. My due date was December 26, 2019, and I carried her almost all the way up to that date. Christmas morning 2019, I was making breakfast for our family and a friend who always joined us. We unwrapped presents and ate, and Eric and Amelia were enjoying the new toys out in the front yard. All of a sudden, I knew I was having contractions. I knew it was about to get real, so I called my midwife. Fun fact, I have had all my babies at home, and yes, on purpose. My midwife had delivered twins the night before, so when I talked to her, she said that she was resting and that I should call her when I couldn't sleep through my contractions. So I laid down and I fell asleep. No one has to tell me twice to go take a nap. Not me or anyone in my family. You can ask all my siblings. We all love to nap. But when I woke up that day, things got intense and I knew it was getting closer. My midwife lived an hour away from me, so I had her and her assistant come while I continued to labor at home. They arrived and were only there about 50 minutes before Isabel barreled through at a whopping 8 pounds, 9 ounces. I know that doesn't sound very big, but I say whopping because my first daughter was only 5 pounds, 13 ounces. When Isabel came out, my midwife said, "Whoa, she's huge." Another fun fact is that I always prayed that God would give me a chubby baby. My first was so tiny that there wasn't any chub. And Isabel was the chubbiest of chubs. Her cheeks were huge and just perfect in every way. I held the most special gift I could have hoped for on that Christmas day. It couldn't have been more beautiful. Isn't that crazy though? God is so detailed and so specific that He would bless me with my child that I had waited for on Christmas Day. It's beyond sweet. It's so thoughtful of Him. There is a song that I listen to daily during this season of waiting. It's called Take Courage by Kristene DiMarco. If you're in a season of waiting for anything, whether it's a child, a job, a home to sell, someone to come to the Lord, I'd encourage you to look it up. Again, it's called Take Courage by Kristene DiMarco. The chorus says, "Take courage, my heart. Stay steadfast, my soul. He's in the waiting. Hold on to your hope as your triumph unfolds. He's never failing." And the bridge goes, "And you who hold the stars, who call them each by name, will surely keep your promise to me as I will rise in victory." It's just the most beautiful song. And during this season, I would play it over and over and over again and just claim that. Because the season of waiting is such a beautiful thing. Although when you're in the middle of it, it can feel excruciating. But I believe that there is so much that we can learn. There's so much that we can take during the season of waiting that is part of the victory. It's not wasted. I learned so much in the waiting. God used it to teach me to seek Him, not what He can give me. I learned about true surrender and not just saying that I want His will and not my own, but actually being forced to come to terms with the possibility of never having what my heart so deeply wanted. Surrendering a desire that I knew was from Him. It seemed cruel to give me that desire and not fulfill it. But I had to finally admit that He knows best. His ways are higher than mine. His ways are not my own. It says in Isaiah 55:9, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts." This verse helps me so much because there are so many things about this life that my mind just doesn't understand. We aren't meant to understand because we aren't God. We have to learn how to trust that He truly does know best. There are a few other things now that I can recognize now that I'm so far out of that painful season. So much of it didn't have to do with me. I believe a lot of it had to do with my oldest and what she needed. She needed more of me. We needed more time together. We really hit our stride when she turned 3 years old, but those first 3 years were very difficult. If I had another when I had wanted one, I cannot imagine how much that would have intensified things. There's 4 years in between my first and second daughters, and then 2 years between number 2 and 3, and then only 16 months between 3 and 4. Wow, do I cherish those first 4 years when it was just me and Amelia. It was such a gift, and it was so special. She got something that my others will never experience. And so today, I am so thankful for those years. And the other thing that I know now is that I needed my second daughter. I needed it to be Isabel. If I had gotten pregnant any sooner, it wouldn't have been her. I'm sure I would have loved whoever it would have been, but I cannot imagine my life without my Isabel. She's exactly who I needed. One special thing about Isabel is that at night when it's time to snuggle, you don't snuggle her. She snuggles you. And what I mean by that is if you try to pull her in and lay her head on your chest or try to wrap your arms around her, she'll stop you. She'll bring your head to her chest and she will wrap her arms around you. And sometimes she'll sweetly kiss my cheeks and then my nose and then my forehead while holding me close to her heart. There have been dark days this year while I've battled postpartum depression and anxiety. And there have been nights where I go to snuggle with Isabel and she pulled me in. She put my head on her chest and I silently wept while she held me tight. God knew who I would need. He knew who our family would need. Sometimes we think we know what's best, but we have to get comfortable with knowing that He knows it all. If He's withholding something from us or telling us no about something, we have to make peace with believing that He truly has our best interest at heart. He isn't doing it to be cruel. He's doing it out of love because He knows exactly what we need. He has good plans for us. The enemy likes to make it seem like God is punishing us or we aren't worthy of the goodness we are praying for. But sometimes it's not that we're not worthy, it's because we aren't ready. And He prepares us so that when we are ready, He can bless us with the gifts that He has for us. His timing is perfect. A few months ago after Isaiah was born, I was sitting at church holding him, and I heard God speak to me saying, "You are on the other side of your testimony." I was sitting there with my 4 beautiful kids, remembering a time I had no guarantee that that was my future, except a picture that God had put in my mind. I felt a responsibility to keep sharing it when I am able to, so that others who might be in a season of waiting would feel encouraged to know that nothing is wasted and that in time God will come through. It doesn't have to be waiting for a baby. It could be waiting for anything. Like I said earlier, waiting for a job, waiting for someone to come back to the Lord, waiting to get married when everyone around you is married, waiting for healing. Seasons of waiting can be so different for everyone. They can be painful. I still well up with tears when I look at Isabel. She'll be 4 today on Christmas Day. It's overwhelming to me that the God of the universe loves me so much that He heard my cries and He answered my prayers in such a special, precious way. She's my living, breathing testimony of God's faithfulness. But I had to wait. I had to wait 3 long years just so it would be her. And every single day was worth it. She makes every hard day worth it. Every negative pregnancy test was worth it. And every tear that was shed, I'd cry every single one of them again, just so that I could be her mom. And I know that sounds super cheesy and cliche, but it's the truth. I'd go through it all again if it meant that I could still have my girl. Thank you for joining me today. If this episode resonated with you, or if this podcast has been a blessing in your life, please leave a review on your favorite platform. And don't forget to subscribe so you'll be notified of all upcoming episodes. Remember that God is at work today in mighty ways, ready to make rivers in the wasteland. If He can do it for me, I know He can do it for you.